My father crushed my dreams for his golden child and refused to pay for my tuition. In the end, I got my revenge. Okay, so I'm a guy, 35 years old, and my little brother is 31. Growing up, our dad basically raised us from middle school on. He is 60 today. Growing up, it was very obvious that my dad always liked my brother more, and after some time, I just got used to it. I mean, I never became the son my dad wanted. I wasn't into sports or all that macho stuff most guys get into. Honestly, stuff that people usually think of as girly was more my thing. I was such a mama's boy, loving all things cooking, reading, and even singing. My dad really tried to get me into football, but I just wasn't great at it. You know, over time, my dad and I kinda grew distant. My brother, though, was totally the son my dad always dreamed of. He was tough, loved adventure, and didn't care about getting dirty or hurt while playing. In my dad's eyes, he was the perfect kid, and it was pretty clear that my dad liked him way more than me. Dad would constantly brag about my brother, but never said anything nice about me. My mom was totally different. She treated both of us equally and never played favorites. That fairness is one of the reasons I felt closer to her. I did try to spend time with my dad, just hang out with him, but once things got a little rocky between us, he didn't seem too keen on trying to fix it. Unfortunately, the one who kept our not-so-perfect family together, my mom, passed away when I was in the 8th grade. She was battling cancer, and by the time we found out, it was already too late. By the time we realized how bad my mom's condition was, it was already too late to do anything. She went so fast, it felt like a dream. Her death totally broke me, and I had a tough time dealing with it. The only thing that kept me was cooking. I ended up daily in the kitchen, whipping up something new like it was the only thing keeping me afloat. Cooking brings me back to my mom, who was an amazing cook. She always said that had she not had to step in and take over running her dad's business, she would surely have pursued a career as a chef. Cooking became my go-to comfort, especially since my dad and brother weren't really there for me while I was grieving. They just buried their feelings and kept pulling away. Kind of the opposite of what you'd expect in most families during tough times. My dad couldn't stand seeing me in the kitchen. It just stressed him out even more. He kept telling me to do something more manly and to get out of what he thought was a woman's space. One day, he just lost it. He told me that if he saw me in the kitchen again, I'd have to do all the other housework too. He said I should stop being soft and be more like my brother, and that kicked off a huge fight between us. So, in the middle of that argument, I finally dropped the bomb on my dad and told him I thought he never really loved me. I was actually quite shocked when he didn't even deny it. He just went ahead and agreed, and just like that, the truth was finally out. That was probably the last time my dad and I ever had any real conversation because after that I stopped trying to get his approval. He just didn't seem to care, and I was out of energy to even try anymore. For the next couple of years, I shut myself out completely, just hanging out in my room, jamming to the music, and picking up new recipes. I really wanted to make a name for myself as a chef, not for my sake, but to pay homage to my mom. The conversations between my dad and me became very rare, only when we really had to talk. My brother was pretty much the same, totally ignoring me, just like our dad. After losing Mom, I felt all alone with nobody to count on. So when it was time to apply to colleges, I figured I'd go for a combo of awesome culinary schools and regular universities. I wasn't really sure if my dad would be cool with it, but I had to give it a shot. That summer, I secretly interned at this restaurant, got some hands-on experience, and even scored a recommendation letter from them to help my applications out. That letter of recommendation was the clincher. I got accepted into many of the schools I had applied to, including one of the top culinary programs in the world, which, by the way, was located in Italy. I really felt great about the chance, but damned nervous, as I knew I needed my dad's thumbs up to make it work. I had already decided that if he was to hesitate, I would just beg him to let me go. I was totally set on not letting anything mess with my dreams. So when I finally got the guts to tell Dad, I totally braced myself for him to brush off my dreams and call them unmanly. But man, I wasn't ready for him to flat out say he wouldn't pay for my tuition. I was just shocked and lost, especially since my dad wasn't even hurting for cash. He was actually doing pretty well and could have easily sent me to Italy. His refusal didn't seem to be about money. It felt like yet another rejection of me and my choices. It wasn't really about the money. My dad not wanting to pay my tuition had nothing to do with money. The real kicker was way more painful. He said that if I went to Italy and joined such a fancy school, it would make my little brother feel all insecure. But he was already having a hard time with his grades and couldn't really focus, so my dad thought my success would just make things harder for him. Instead of having my back, he was all about me either going to a community college or coming up with a way to pay for my tuition myself. I was blown away by his reasoning and just couldn't believe he'd do something so harsh to his own kid. I tried to explain how much this opportunity meant to me, but he wouldn't budge. He even went as far as to say that his number one priority was my brother's well-being and that he didn't want me competing with him. I just had no words because it seemed like no other dad would crush his kid's dreams just to keep another sibling from feeling insecure. I did everything from begging to crying, but he wouldn't change his mind. The situation blew into a big fight, and I ended up saying stuff I'd kept bottled up for years. So yeah, after that fight, I decided to bolt from my dad's place for good and crash at my aunt's, my mom's older sister. Truth be told, the real reason I stayed there that long was simply because it felt so ridiculously comfortable in that house with all those memories of my mom. And let's be real. Moving in with my aunt would have meant switching schools since she lived pretty far from my high school. But after everything with my dad, I couldn't stay there any longer. I opened up to her about everything. How my dad totally refused to pay for my tuition, and how much I really needed her help. It was so hard to ask her for that kind of money, especially since she wasn't nearly as loaded as my dad, but she was comforting, saying she'd find a way to help me out. She somehow managed to gather her friends and raised enough cash to send me to the cooking school I had always wanted to attend. I will always be extremely grateful for her kindness and generosity. When I reached the school, I took up a part-time job to help with my expenses and really tried to do well. I just wanted to make sure that all the sacrifices she and others made for me paid off. I really busted my butt and put all I had into my cooking skills. Graduation came. I was one of the best chefs in the class. Just a few months later, I scored a gig at an uptown French restaurant. I sent half of my first paycheck back to my aunt to pay her back for all the support she gave me. Thank goodness I didn't have to rely on student loans, or I probably wouldn't have been able to pay them back. I spent a few years in Italy before finally making my way back home, having saved up enough cash to start my own restaurant. For the next 2 years or so, I was head chef at this other local spot while still chasing the dream of having my own place. Just a few weeks ago, everything finally came together and I was able to open the restaurant I had worked so hard for. So 2 of my friends who came to hang out with me while I was in Italy decided to team up with me as co-owners. They were super chill about letting me pick the name of the restaurant, and I really appreciated it. Funny enough, they both came from the same area, which just made our partnership feel even cooler. We were all stoked to open the restaurant in my city, and I had picked out a name that meant a lot to me. It was named after my mom. It ended up being a cool coincidence because not only was my mom's name beautiful, but it was also pretty rare around here, which made it even more special. Everything was finally falling into place. Okay, so a few days ago, we had a soft opening for a chosen few people before the actual opening. I invited my aunt and some of her friends who helped me with my tuition and a couple of my friends from school. And yeah, pretty much the whole list of people I invited. I did not invite my dad or bro for pretty obvious reasons. Even if I wanted to, there just wouldn't have been a way since we haven't talked since I moved out, and neither of them bothered to get in touch. I guess we're all better off this way. I had a gut feeling they were just waiting for a chance to cash in on my success, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So they got to the party an hour early. With the security and all, they snuck in without a problem. So, my dad and brothers said they were there to surprise me since we all have the same last name, and I gotta say they really pulled it off. I was genuinely taken aback when I saw them. They welcomed me like everything was cool between us, like nothing ever went wrong. In fact, it was probably the first time in my life that they were being so nice. I was so shocked and I just froze when they walked into the restaurant. So my friends noticed right away that something was up, and after saying hi to my family, figured we needed some space. I really appreciated that they caught my awkward vibes so quickly. While I was trying to recover from the shock of seeing them again, they sprung another surprise on me. They gave me a gift, a portrait of my mom. Anyway, he said he had this picture made especially for my restaurant. He just heard there was some swanky place opening up with the same name as my mom and thought it'd make kind of a cool touch. So my dad, trying to act like everything was cool again, said he knew all along that I had it in me. Then my brother jumped in and started boasting about me, saying how proud he was of what I did. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt so weird, and I immediately got this vibe that something was definitely not right about this. I didn't say much at first. I just waited for them to come to the point, knowing there had to be a reason for their sudden presence. So, after a while, they finally dropped the bomb on what was going on with them hanging out. It turns out that my brother had taken up a job as a bartender, maybe something he got just because my dad knew this guy who owned a club. He had bad grades all through high school and college, which is why he never landed any of those high-paid jobs my dad always thought he would get. Plus, he goofed off in high school football games and ruined his opportunity at a sports scholarship. Ironically, he went to community college because every other school that he applied to rejected him. So they were pressuring me into making my brother a partner in my restaurant so that he would seem more legitimate, although he hadn't done much to deserve it. I badly wanted to laugh in their faces, but somehow I restrained myself. So I told them I would think about what they asked. Honestly, I wasn't going to consider it at all. I just didn't want to kick them out and mess up the vibe of the party. I had this way better plan in my head, one that would finally let me get back at the family who only showed up when I got successful. They were smiling, but had no idea what was coming. As the night fell, guests started arriving, and soon enough, everybody we had invited was there. I simply stayed put and talked through the night while my dad and brother also did their own thing. I even found them boasting about me to some of the other guests, and I couldn't help but marvel at their audacity. As the party was winding down, it was time for a toast by me and my partners. My friends went first because I wanted to save the best for last. Then it was my turn. At last, I got to speak my truth that night. I started off by giving a shout out to all our guests, and then I toasted my mom because she's the one who brought me here. I truly felt like her belief in me when I was a kid helped give me the guts to chase my dreams, and that faith stuck with me even after she was no longer around. So I said my goodbyes to her, and I decided it was about time to get real. I told her how I had to borrow money from my aunt and her friends, and how much I appreciated their wonderful support in order to go to culinary school. So, I finally got to the core of it all. The real reason I needed the loan in the first place was my family. I told of how I was raised by a father who never really showed me any love or trust in me, always picking on my interests in cooking and anything that was considered girly. I spoke about my younger brother, pretty much just a chip off the old block, and how my father wouldn't cough up the money for my tuition because he was afraid that I'd end up more successful than his golden child. That was actually the real reason I had to split from home. I mean, I through all that went down, I was still able to rise above it all and become the person I am today. Yeah, I have to give them some props for the hard times they put me through, because if it wasn't for them, I probably would never have known how tough I really am. While I was talking, most of the guests gave my dad and brother these super icy glares, and they even seemed to get how awkward it was. I knew they didn't really feel that way, but it was still pretty satisfying to see. Anyways, I walked over to my dad and bro, and surprise, surprise, I hugged them, mimicking the fake vibe they gave off when they came to see me that day. Looks like I could play this game too. I told them that since they came to celebrate my win, I had let go of everything that went down before, and to make it even better, I said I was cool with giving my brother a job as the bartender at my restaurant. It felt like some big emotional moment, and by the end of my speech, I received a round of applause from my dad and brother. I even heard some wolf whistles. But really, the only people who knew what was going on were me and my family. I was basically trying to embarrass them, and I totally did. They just had to smile and act like they were thankful because they couldn't really storm out mad, even though I knew that's what they were itching to do. So when the crowd finally cleared out and it was time to go home, my dad and brother confronted me right outside the restaurant. They were super angry, and I could totally see angry tears in my brother's eyes. They wanted to know why I did what I did. They said if I never meant to make my brother a partner, I should have just told them to leave as soon as they got there. I just laughed and told them this was my way of getting back at them for all the stuff they've put me through over the years. I threw in that this was exactly what they had coming. So after that, I just walked off without glancing back, even when I could hear my brother crying, saying I was cruel, and yelling that I'd regret it. Honestly, I didn't give a damn. By that point, I was already in my car, cruising away. That was like a few days ago, and I haven't heard a peep from them since. My aunt thinks I might have gone a little overboard, and that I should have just kicked them out right away instead of what I did. But I couldn't agree with her. Honestly, I think they totally deserved it. So, reaching out, I've pretty much decided I'm not going to apologize. My aunt thinks I was a bit too harsh, but honestly, I don't feel bad about the whole thing, and I'm just not going to pretend like that is the case. They had the opportunity to apologize when they visited, yet they completely missed it. I had mentioned this to my aunt, and even though she still believes I shouldn't have done what I did, hasn't really said much more about it. Looks like we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one, and that's cool with me. Check this out. He's been talking shit about me to our old school friends. That sucks. So much, because we went to the same high school together, and now, out of the blue, people are texting me, asking if it's true I kicked my dad and brother out of my restaurant for serving them 3-day-old food on purpose. Yeah, he spun the situation to make himself sound like the victim, which, frankly, doesn't surprise me one bit. Normally, I would not give a damn about idiot gossip, but I surely don't want potential customers to believe that crap is true. So I texted my brother and told him if he didn't cease and desist with this lying about me and my restaurant, I would make sure he lost the job that he has now. Fingers crossed that puts an end to this because I simply don't have time for their drama now. I'm busy as hell right now, so now isn't the time for this crap. Update. Haha, my brother texted me back saying he'll stop only if I make him a partner. I seriously don't get what kind of delusion he's got going on. And if he actually wants to be a partner, wouldn't it be kinda dumb to keep trash-talking the same restaurant? I think my dad's just trying to hook me up with some fancy job so I don't have to do any actual work. But that's not gonna work for me. I warned him that if he doesn't knock it off, my attorneys are going to get involved, and he really isn't in a position to negotiate with me. The only reason I'm holding off right now is because I'm just not in the mood for any more drama. But if he pulls anything after this, he's definitely going to wish he hadn't. He really should take this as my final warning. For his own sake. Update 3. Yo, it's been like a month since I last updated you, and I've been so busy that I haven't had time to tell you what happened after that. My brother finally stopped talking behind my back, but he was still totally eager to ride my coattails. So, like a few weeks ago, my dad and brother came by to visit me, obviously trying to scare me a little. So they came to my place, all ready to sue me for using my mom's name for my restaurant, saying they had already spoken to a lawyer. They were like, if I don't make my brother a partner soon, I'll be in hot water. But come on, I totally knew it was a bluff because no lawyer in the world would take this silly case. They missed the big point. My mom is my mom too. Well, at that moment, I was really through with their nonsense. I told them straight to their faces that if they didn't back off, I would have no other choice but to call the cops. My brother freaked out and tried to grab me by the collar, but thankfully my dad stepped in. I guess all the humiliation finally made him snap. Honestly, it wasn't on me, and they totally got lucky I didn't just call the cops on the spot. I told him to bounce, but he just told my brother to chill in the car while he had a heart-to-heart with me. Once my bro was out of the way, my dad tried to play some mind games with me by saying that if my mom found out what I was up to, she'd be so angry at me. I told him to just back off because I was done. Trying to use my mom to get to me was just low. We were way beyond making up. Neither of them ever said sorry for what they did, so I couldn't get why they thought I'd just let it slide without even a word from them. You know, I bet my mom would have been just as upset when my dad wouldn't pay for my tuition or whenever he made me feel like I didn't measure up. He really had no business telling me what she would or wouldn't want. I totally know she's proud of me, no matter where she is. And there's nothing my dad says that's going to change that. At least my restaurant's doing good, and I'm really hoping we can expand soon.